1 in 5 children will be bullied this year. But for single dad and chef Leo Vance, the statistics became devastatingly personal when a call from his daughter's exclusive private school summoned him to a confrontation that would expose a hidden war raging in its hallways. Leo Vance wasn't just any father. He was a chef de cuisine at Le Soleil, a Michelin-starred temple of gastronomy, who spent his nights crafting art on plates for the elite. By day, he fought a different battle, ensuring his bright, sensitive daughter, Maya, could navigate the cutthroat social ecosystem of the Brighton Academy, where a parent's net worth often dictated a child's social worth. This was the fragile piece, shattered the moment the principal called him in. What Leo didn't know was that his response would ignite a firestorm, exposing the raw nerve of privilege and punishment in modern America. 5 a.m., the world of Leo Vance began not with an alarm, but with the precise calculation of time. In the quiet dark of their two-bedroom apartment, he moved with the efficiency of a man running a marathon every single day. First, the coffee, ground fresh. Then, the review of Maya's homework left on the kitchen table, a diorama of the solar system, Pluto lovingly included on the edge. Next, the inspection of the uniform, the crisp, burgundy plaid skirt of Brighton Academy, a uniform that cost more than his weekly grocery bill. Every stitch was a promise, an investment in a future he was determined to give her, paid for with 16-hour days and hands permanently scarred by burns and knife cuts. By 5:45, he was in his own uniform, the stark white chef's coat emblazoned with the embroidered crimson circle and name of Le Soleil. To the world, it was a badge of honor. To Leo, it was a suit of armor. It granted him passage into a realm of obscene wealth where a single tasting menu cost more than his rent so that Maya could sit in classrooms with children whose families owned that wealth. It was a fragile, meticulously balanced equation. Work, school, sleep, repeat. A life built on the knife's edge of exhaustion and hope. Maya, at 10 years old, was the quiet center of this universe. She had her mother's curious eyes and a sensitivity that made her absorb the world like a sponge. She was the kid who rescued spiders from the sink, who worried about the homeless man on their corner, who once asked Leo if the lobsters in the restaurant tank were lonely. This kindness in the ecosystem of Brighton Academy was a vulnerability. The school was less an educational institution and more a petri dish of inherited privilege. Children arrived in luxury sedans, discussing ski trips to Gstaad and summer houses in the Hamptons with the casual ease of discussing the weather. Maya arrived in a 7-year-old sedan, smelling faintly of garlic and thyme from the previous night's family meal at the restaurant. The bullying started small, a misplaced notebook, a whispered nickname. Cafeteria girl, they called her, a reference to the free lunch program she was on, a fact she tried to hide by bringing elaborate chef-crafted leftovers that only made her more of a target. Leo saw the signs, the slight droop in her shoulders, the newfound reluctance to talk about her day. He coached her with the patience he used to train a new line cook. Hold your head high. Your worth is not their currency. But the research is clear. Nearly 20% of kids are bullied, and for children from single-parent, lower-affluence households, the odds are statistically stacked higher. The limited time for monitoring, the economic stress, it creates cracks where cruelty seeps in. The catalyst was Oliver Thorne, son of Cassandra Thorne, CEO of Viridian Capital, a venture firm whose name was synonymous with aggressive growth and ruthless efficiency. Oliver, at 11, was a masterpiece of inherited entitlement. He ruled a small court of sycophants. His power derived not from strength or charm, but from the unshakable knowledge that his mother's influence and her donations to the Brighton Annual Fund made him untouchable. The incident happened in the art room. Maya was carefully adding rings to her Jupiter. Oliver, passing by, accidentally knocked the entire project to the floor, the painted planets scattering and cracking. "Oops," he said, not looking sorry at all. "Your dad can probably glue it back together. He's good with scraps, right?" Something in Maya, usually so placid, snapped. She didn't yell. She simply looked at him and said, quietly but clearly, "At least my dad makes beautiful things." What does yours do besides make your mom miserable? It was a direct hit, echoing a tabloid rumor about the Thorns' very public, very bitter separation. Oliver's face flushed crimson. He retaliated not with words but with action. He grabbed the bottle of black tempera paint and poured it over Maya's head. The call came to Leo at 3:17 p.m. during the critical pre-service lull at Le Soleil. It was the principal, Dr. Armand. His voice was a study in bureaucratic calm. "Mr. Vance, we have a situation involving Maya, a physical altercation. We need you to come in immediately to meet with the other parent." The word altercation sent a cold spike through Leo's gut. His Maya, physical. He told his sous chef he had a family emergency, a phrase that in a Michelin-starred kitchen carries the weight of a death in the family, and drove to the school in a haze of fear and fury. The hallway outside the principal's office was a stage set for silent warfare. On one bench sat Cassandra Thorne. She was a vision of corporate power, auburn hair and a severe bob, a navy blazer that cost more than Leo's monthly car payment, a gold Cartier bracelet on her wrist. She was typing furiously on her phone, her expression one of profound annoyance, as if this meeting was a minor market fluctuation to be corrected. Standing beside her, looking at his shoes, was Oliver. He wore the same uniform, but his was new, unwrinkled. He didn't look ashamed, he looked bored. Then Leo saw Maya. She was sitting on the opposite bench, small and utterly alone. Her hair was still damp and stained at the ends with black. Her uniform blouse was ruined, but it was her face that shattered him. Not tears, but a hollow, distant look of utter defeat. The vibrant, curious girl was gone, replaced by a shell. She looked up as he arrived, and in her eyes he saw a question. "Is this my fault?" He went to her first, kneeling, ignoring everyone else. "Hey, my star," he whispered, using his old nickname for her. "You okay?" She just shook her head, a tiny movement. He put a hand on her shoulder, feeling her tremble. In that moment, he wasn't a chef. He was a dam holding back a flood. Dr. Armand ushered them into his office. It was lined with books no one ever read and awards the school had given itself. The principal steepled his fingers, launching into a practiced, neutral summary. "We have a zero-tolerance policy for physical violence. Both children were involved. Maya provoked Oliver with a personal comment. Oliver responded inappropriately with the paint. We view this as mutual conflict." Mutual conflict. Leo felt the phrase like a physical blow. "She was provoked for weeks," Leo said, his voice dangerously calm. "She was covered in paint. He assaulted her." Cassandra Thorne finally looked up from her phone. "My son has never been in trouble before," she stated, as if reading a press release. "He's a straight-A student, a champion swimmer." This reaction was clearly born of extreme provocation. We're all aware of the heightened emotional environments in single-parent households. She didn't look at Leo as she said it. She addressed Dr. Armand, treating Leo as part of the furniture. The principal nodded, as if considering a valid point. "The emotional context is important, Ms. Thorne. Mr. Vance, we must consider the whole child." Maya's comment was deeply personal. Leo stared at them. The equation was laid bare. Oliver's social capital, his mother's donations, his untarnished record, they were assets on a balance sheet. Maya's sensitivity, Leo's long work hours, their economic precarity, they were liabilities. The system wasn't designed for justice. It was designed for equilibrium, and the equilibrium favored the heavier weight. "What is the consequence?" Leo asked, each word precise. Dr. Armand cleared his throat. "Given the mutual nature, we're recommending a 3-day in-school suspension for both students, and mandatory sessions with our counselor to discuss conflict resolution." 3 days asterisk. Maya would miss class, fall behind, bear the scarlet letter of suspension. Oliver would likely treat it as a vacation. The punishment was equal in name only. Its impact would be profoundly unequal. Cassandra Thorne gave a thin, satisfied smile. "That seems reasonable, a learning opportunity for both." Leo looked at Maya, then at Oliver's smug, downcast face, then at Cassandra's expression of dismissive victory. The carefully constructed dam within him, built from patience and protocol and the need to belong, began to crack. He wasn't going to argue with the principal. He wasn't going to plead with the CEO. He stood up. The flour-dusted white of his chef's coat was a stark blasphemy in the wood-paneled office. He turned to Oliver. His voice was low, calm, and carried the absolute authority of a man who commanded a blisteringly hot kitchen full of stressed professionals. "Oliver," Leo said. The boy flinched, finally meeting his eyes. "Look at my daughter." Oliver's gaze shifted reluctantly to Maya. "You see the paint, you did that, you see that look in her eyes, you put that there. You think this is a game with rules your mother can rewrite. But let me explain something to you. In the real world outside these expensive walls, actions have consequences that no donation can erase. You are not a champion. You are a coward who attacks someone smaller. And that is a truth no amount of your mother's money will ever change." The room froze. Dr. Armand's mouth hung open. Cassandra Thorne's face went from smug to stunned, then to a mask of pure, incandescent fury. She stood up. "How dare you speak to my son that way? Armand, this is..." Leo didn't wait for her finish. He took Maya's hand. "We're leaving." As he walked out, he passed directly by Cassandra Thorne. He stopped, meeting her furious gaze with one of icy clarity. He didn't raise his voice. He simply said the words that would detonate their lives. "You've taught your son that power means he can hurt people without consequence. That is the greatest failure of parenting I have ever witnessed. And tonight, while you're deciding which lawyer to call, remember this. Your son broke my daughter's art, but you are breaking your son." He walked out, Maya's hand firmly in his, leaving behind a silence so complete it was like a vacuum. He had just declared war on the most powerful parent in the school. And as he hit the bright fluorescent lights of the hallway, he realized the battle was only beginning. Because Cassandra Thorne didn't just accept defeats. She annihilated obstacles. And Leo Vance, the single dad chef, had just made himself her biggest target. The drive home was a silent movie. Maya stared out the window, the last of the black paint like a dark tear stain in her hair. Leo's hands were tight on the wheel, his mind already calculating the fallout. He had just broken the cardinal rule of their precarious existence: never draw the direct ire of the elite. The retaliation would not be emotional, it would be systemic. And it arrived not with a bang, but with a discreet email, waiting in his inbox by the time he'd made Maya a cup of tea. It was from Monsieur Guérard, the legendary, terrifying owner of Le Soleil. The subject line was a single word: urgent. The body was a masterpiece of Gallic passive aggression. "Cher Leo, it has come to my attention that personal matters are creating reverberations. We must speak. 9 p.m. in my office. Do not be late." Leo's blood ran cold. The restaurant was his financial lifeline, his sole claim to a salary that could keep Maya at Brighton. Cassandra Thorne hadn't wasted an hour. She was a major investor in the hospitality group that partly funded Le Soleil's recent expansion. Her call would have been a quiet, polite suggestion about distracting staff drama. In the world of fine dining, that was a death sentence. He went to the meeting that night after service, still in his stained whites. Monsieur Guérard, a man built like a barrel of aged Bordeaux, did not offer him a seat. "You embarrassed a very important woman, Leo, in front of her child, in front of a school administrator. This is not the comportment of a chef de cuisine. You are not a brawler in an alley. You are an artist. And artists," he said, tapping the desk, "must be unimpeachable. Their life must be a pristine service." Leo tried to explain, to speak of Maya, of the paint, of the weeks of torment. Guérard held up a hand. "I do not care about the squabbles of children. I care about the reputation of my house. You have made your private life a public problem. Effective immediately, you are suspended. 1 week. Without pay. Use it to resolve your situation. Permanently." The suspension was a financial torpedo. A week's lost wages meant robbing the already anemic savings account meant for Maya's next tuition installment. But worse was the message. His value was conditional on his invisibility. The system Cassandra represented could reach into his kitchen, his sanctuary, and pluck him out with a flick of its wrist. The next morning, the institutional gears began to grind. A formal letter arrived from Brighton Academy's Board of Conduct, citing Leo for verbally abusive and threatening behavior toward a minor during the mediation. It requested his attendance at a disciplinary hearing. The language was legalese, but the threat was clear. They could revoke Maya's enrollment for having a disruptive parent. The hearing was set for Friday, 3 days away. Meanwhile, Maya's 3-day in-school suspension began. Leo walked her to the school's annex, a soulless room where suspended students did silent worksheets under the watch of a disinterested aide. As they approached the door, they passed Oliver Thorne being dropped off by a driver in a sleek black car. Oliver saw Maya, smirked, and made a subtle painting motion with his hand. He wasn't going to the annex. He was heading to the main building, his suspension apparently waived or creatively reinterpreted. The unequal application of the rules was now a visible, daily humiliation. Leo spent that Tuesday in a furious, helpless haze. He applied for gig work on chef apps, took a brutal, cash-only shift cleaning grease traps at a downtown diner. His phone buzzed constantly, not with support, but with a silent social media storm. A vaguely worded post appeared on a popular local community concerns forum frequented by Brighton parents. Shocking aggression from a service worker toward a child at Brighton today. Some people clearly can't handle the pressures of parenting in a high-achieving environment. Makes you wonder about stability. It didn't name names, but the clues were obvious. The comments filled with outraged emojis and calls for the school to protect our kids. The court of public opinion, manipulated by whispers, was convening. But then a crack of light. On Wednesday, as Leo was leaving the diner, his phone rang with an unknown number. It was Sarah Bennett, Oliver's homeroom teacher. Her voice was hushed, anxious. "Mr. Vance, I can't talk long. I saw the paint in Maya's hair. I heard what happened. I'm supposed to be neutral, but what's happening isn't right." She told him Oliver had a documented history of social friction that was consistently minimized. Previous parents had complained, only to be placated or to withdraw their children after facing subtle pressure. She mentioned a private classroom server where students shared project files. "Check the history," she whispered. "From last month, the group project on ancient Rome." Then she hung up. That night after Maya was asleep, Leo logged into Maya's school portal. His fingers trembled. He navigated to the project server, found the Roman history group. Oliver, Maya, and 2 other students had been teamed together. The chat log was a devastating archive. Day after day, Oliver's messages. "Maya, do the research on the sewers lol fitting. Your part is boring, make it better. My mom says your dad's restaurant is overrated." The other kids, eager to curry favor, piled on with laughing emojis. Maya's responses were polite, professional. "I've compiled the sources. I'll try to make the aqueducts more engaging." The final message from Oliver read, "Just turn in whatever. I'll put my name first. My mom's donating a new lab." This wasn't just a one-time pain attack. It was a campaign of psychological domination, documented in digital ink, and the school had access to all of it. They had seen this pattern and done nothing. Leo had his first piece of hard evidence. But evidence for what? Taking it to Dr. Armand would be useless. The teacher, Sarah Bennett, had risked her job to give him this. He needed a different strategy. On Thursday, the attack broadened. A food critics blog known for its gossipy asides published a reservation. "Heard whispers of turmoil in the kitchen at Le Soleil. Seems the steady hand at the helm might be distracted by extracurricular dramas. A shame. The Hollandaise was always so perfectly stable." It was a targeted, professional smear. In the hyper-competitive world of Michelin stars, perception was everything. One more whisper like that, and Leo wouldn't just be suspended. He'd be unemployable in this town. Desperate, Leo did the only thing he could think of. He reached out to an old culinary school friend, Ben, who now worked as a line cook at a noisy, popular gastropub across town. Over a beer after Ben's shift, Leo laid it out: the bullying, the suspension, the smear campaign. Ben listened, nodding. "Dude, they're trying to erase you. Classic power play. Isolate, discredit, destroy." Then he leaned in. "But you got a weapon they don't understand. He pointed at Leo's chef's coat, which he'd brought in a bag. That logo, that name, Le Soleil, you're not just some dad. You're Chef Vance Asterisk. You have a platform, a really, really small one, but it's yours. What does Cassandra Thorne do? She moves money. It's abstract. What do? You make asterisk things, tangible, beautiful things. You need to make something they can't ignore. The idea was terrifying. To go public, even in a small way, was to burn every remaining bridge. But the bridges were already on fire. That night, Leo made a decision. He would not attend the disciplinary hearing as a supplicant. He would go as a prosecutor. He spent the early hours of Friday morning compiling a dossier, screenshots of the chat logs, photos of Maya's stained uniform, a timeline of events, and the research he'd done, printouts of the studies linking economic inequality to bullying prevalence, the statistics on single-parent household challenges. He wasn't just fighting for Maya anymore. He was fighting against a system that weaponized privilege and called it fairness. The hearing was held in the school's boardroom. It was a long, imposing table. On one side, Dr. Armand, the stern head of the Board of Conduct, a lawyer from the school's firm, and to Leo's utter lack of surprise, Cassandra Thorne. She had brought her own lawyer, a sleek man in a suit that probably cost $10,000. They were a wall of expensive tailoring and impassive faces. On the other side, Leo, alone in his one good jacket and a folder of papers. Dr. Armand opened proceedings. This hearing is to address the serious allegations of verbal abuse and threatening conduct by Mr. Leonardo Vance toward a minor, Oliver Thorne, on school premises. Leo didn't let him finish. With respect, Leo said, his voice calm but filling the room, this hearing is about the systemic bullying of my daughter, Maya Vance, by Oliver Thorne and the school's deliberate failure to protect her. He slid copies of his dossier across the polished table. The lawyer picked one up, her eyebrows rising as she saw the chat logs. Cassandra's lawyer immediately objected. This is a prejudicial attempt to shift focus. The issue is Mr. Vance's conduct. His conduct was a direct response to your client's son's conduct, Leo said, which your school has documented and ignored for months. He cited the dates from the logs. He referenced the teacher's observations, careful not to name Sarah Bennett. He presented the photo of Maya. You called this mutual conflict. This is the face of mutual conflict. Or is it the face of a victim your institution failed? Cassandra Thorne spoke for the first time, her voice icy. This is character assassination of an 11-year-old boy. My son is gifted. He is a leader. This, output from a classroom server, proves nothing except that children banter. Banter, Leo repeated. He opened to a printed study from the National Institutes of Health. Research indicates that societies with high economic inequality see more bullying because hierarchies become accepted. Your son isn't just bantering, he's enforcing a hierarchy. And this school, he said, looking at Dr. Armand, is letting him do it. The room erupted into legalistic crosstalk. The school's lawyer demanded the hearing stick to its original scope. Cassandra's lawyer threatened defamation, but the genie was out of the bottle. The pristine narrative of disruptive chef attacks poor little rich boy was cracked. Leo had forced the real issue onto the table. Dr. Armand, looking deeply uncomfortable, called for a recess. As they filed out, Cassandra Thorne stopped beside Leo. The cold fury was gone, replaced by something more calculating, more dangerous. She spoke so only he could hear. You have no idea the machinery you've just kicked, Mr. Vance. You think a few printed papers matter. I will spend more on legal fees today than you make in a year. I will bury you. And when I'm done, you won't be able to get a job cooking school lunches. She smiled, a thin, joyless line. Your daughter will finish the year here, watching her father be dismantled piece by piece. That will be the real lesson she learns. She walked away. Leo stood there, the adrenaline draining, leaving behind a cold, heavy dread. He had fought back, and all he'd done was reveal the true scale of the enemy. He had the truth on his side. But Cassandra Thorne had the power to reshape truth itself. As he left the boardroom, his phone vibrated. It was a message from Monsieur Guérard. The suspension is extended indefinitely. Do not come to the restaurant. We will courier your personal effects. The first front had fallen. His career was over. And as he walked out into the school parking lot, he saw a local news van pulling up to the curb. The reporter, a young woman with a sharp blazer and a determined look, marched straight toward Leo. For a wild second, he thought Cassandra had called them to finish him publicly. But the reporter's first question changed everything. "Mr. Vance, Nina Cruz, Channel 7. We received an anonymous tip about a cover-up of bullying at Brighton Academy favoring a donor's family. Can you confirm you're the parent who presented evidence today?" Leo's mind reeled. Anonymous tip. It wasn't him. Sarah Bennett, the teacher. Another parent. It didn't matter. The machinery Cassandra kicked had a counterweight. The story was now a live wire. He gave a brief, cautious statement. "My focus is on my daughter's safety and a fair process." He didn't hand over his dossier, but he didn't need to. The mere fact of a news van at the school asking these questions was a seismic event in the insulated world of Brighton. By 6 p.m., a teaser for the segment ran. Elite school bullying allegations and a chef father fighting back. The story at 7. The community forum exploded. The narrative was fracturing. Comments now included, "Maybe there's more to this. And since when does news cover a private school hearing?" Cassandra's response was swift and nuclear. By 7:30, as the balanced but damning news segment aired, a cease and desist letter from her lawyers was emailed to Leo and the school, alleging defamation and intentional infliction of emotional distress on Oliver. A separate letter was sent to Channel 7, but the public genie was out. The next morning, Leo's inbox and social media were flooded with two types of messages. Vile threats from anonymous accounts calling him a jealous, unstable loser, and, quietly, emails from other Brighton parents. "My son went through something similar with Oliver Thorne last year. We were told to build resilience. We left the school. My daughter came home crying for weeks. They said it was social dynamics. Thank you for speaking up." There were 7 emails, 7 families, a silent pattern of casualties now finding a voice. One parent, a quiet software engineer named David, agreed to meet Leo. Over coffee, David showed him photos of his son's vandalized backpack, screenshots of similar chat logs. "They made us feel like we were the problem," David said, his voice thick with old anger. "Like our kid wasn't tough enough for their world. We couldn't afford the fight. You're standing in the fire. It gives people hope." But hope doesn't pay tuition. With La Solo closed to him, Leo's financial clock was ticking down to 0. The final blow from Brighton came 3 days later, a formal notice of expulsion for Maya, citing the ongoing disruptive and litigious environment created by the parent, which is incompatible with the school's community values. They were throwing her out. The message was clear. The problem wasn't the bully. It was the father who refused to let his child be bullied quietly. The day the expulsion letter arrived, Maya finally broke. The tough shell she'd maintained crumbled. She sobbed in her room, screaming that she hated school, hated the kids, hated that she'd ruined everything. Leo held her, feeling like a failure. He had fought the system, and the system had simply ejected them. He was jobless. His daughter was traumatized and now officially branded. Cassandra Thorne had won. That night, in the depths of his defeat, Ben called. "Check the Eat City blog," he said, his voice giddy. A famous, notoriously tough food critic named James Hull had published a piece. The title, "In Defense of the Chef, Why We Should Care About the Man Behind the Knife." Hull wrote, "Restaurants are not just temples of taste, they are ecosystems of humanity." I learned today that Leo Vance, the chef de cuisine whose canard à l'orange is a transcendent bite of poetry, has been suspended from La Solo. The crime? Defending his child from a bully at her elite school. The parent of said bully is a major investor. This is not a kitchen drama. This is a parable of power, and if we value art, we must value the artist, even, perhaps especially, when he's a father first. Culinary World, a small, intense universe, took notice. Hull's piece was shared by chefs, restaurateurs, food writers. The hashtag #ChefsForLeo started trending locally. Then an unexpected call came. It was from Ana Rivera, the owner of Casa Abuela, a wildly popular, critically acclaimed food truck and catering company known for its innovative Mexican-Korean fusion. She was a powerhouse, a self-made entrepreneur who'd built an empire from one truck. "Leah," she said, no pleasantries. "James Hull forwarded me your dossier, the school stuff. I have 2 kids. This is bullshit. Come work for me. Today, we need a chef for our new events division. Pay is the same as La Solil. Hours are brutal, but we're family, and we protect family." It was a lifeline thrown not from the world he was trying to join, but from the world he'd come from, the world of grit, hustle, and real community. He accepted on the spot. The news of his hearing was a quiet shockwave. Ana Rivera was a beloved local figure, a symbol of authentic success. Her public post welcoming Chef Leo Vance, a man of principle and profound talent, was a direct rebuke to La Solil and the Thorns. The power balance shifted, minutely but significantly. Then the second explosion. The teacher, Sarah Bennett, resigned, and she didn't go quietly. She gave an interview to the same Channel 7 reporter. On camera, her face blurred but her voice steady, she said, "I can no longer be part of an institution that protects perpetrators based on financial contributions." The evidence of systematic bullying was ignored. I saw it. I reported it. I was told to focus on community harmony. "I am resigning in solidarity with Maya Vance and all the silent children we failed." She provided the reporter with redacted copies of her own internal memos to the administration about Oliver's behavior, time-stamped over the past 18 months. This was no longer a he said, she said. This was a whistleblower with documentation. The story went regional. The school board announced an independent review. Cassandra Thorne, for the first time, went silent. No statements, no lawyer letters. Her social media went private. The fortress was cracking. And in the crack, something extraordinary grew. David, the software engineer parent, created a simple, secure website. The Brighton Witness, a place for parents, past and present, to share their experiences anonymously. The stories poured in. Not just about Oliver, but about a culture where wealth dictated justice, where complaints from scholarship families were dismissed, where the pressure to maintain the school's pristine reputation outweighed the duty to protect children. The media now had a dozen sources, a pattern, a scandal. The school, in damage control mode, reached out to Leo. They offered to rescind Maya's expulsion, to place her in a different homeroom, to provide counseling. It was a retreat, but a tactical one. They wanted the story to go away. Leo listened to the nervous head of the board on the phone. He thought of Maya's hollow eyes, of the sobbing child in her bedroom. He thought of the 7 families who emailed him, and the dozens now posting on the witness site. "No," Leo said. "The offer is insufficient. You don't get to pretend this was a misunderstanding. You need to change the policy. You need a transparent, independent anti-bullying committee with parent representation. You need to audit every past complaint that was dismissed. And you need to apologize to my daughter publicly and to every child your system failed." There was a long silence on the line. "Mr. Vance, that's unprecedented." "So is burning down a man's life to protect a bully," Leo replied and hung up. He had transformed. He was no longer just a father defending his child. He had become a catalyst. The local Parents Association, long dominated by the wealthiest families, saw a coup. A slate of new candidates, including David and another parent from the witness site, ran for leadership positions on a platform of transparency and equity. The election was scheduled for the following week. The night before the election, Leo received a package, no return address. Inside was a single heavy piece of cardstock, an invitation, embossed gold lettering on thick cream paper. The Viridian Capital Annual Gala, honoring visionary leadership in our community. It was Cassandra Thorne's flagship charity event, the social event of the season for the city's elite. Scrawled at the bottom in sharp, familiar handwriting was a note. "Come and see what real power looks like. Or stay in your kitchen where you belong, CT." It was a trap, obviously, a show of force, an arena where she held every advantage. To go would be to walk into the lion's den, To stay would be to admit fear to cede the public stage. Leo held the expensive paper, feeling its weight. He thought of Maya finally sleeping peacefully. He thought of Ana Rivera giving him a job without hesitation. He thought of Sarah Bennett sacrificing her career for truth. He wasn't just a chef or a dad anymore. He was a symbol in a fight bigger than himself. He looked at the invitation again, and he knew with absolute certainty that he would go, because the battle had moved from the school hallway to the media to the community. Now it was heading for the very heart of the fortress, and Leo Vance, in his one good suit, with flour still under his fingernails, was going to walk right through the front gate. The Viridian Capitol Gala was a cathedral of wealth. Crystal chandeliers dripped light onto marble floors. Women in gowns that cost more than cars laughed with men whose watches could pay off a mortgage. Leo Vance stood at the edge of the ballroom in his one good suit, feeling like a chef who'd wandered onto a film set. He wasn't here for the champagne. He was here because Cassandra Thorne had issued an invitation to a public execution, and he had decided to rewrite the script. He saw her across the room holding court. She wore a dress of sapphire silk, a masterpiece of quiet power. She hadn't seen him yet. Leo took a breath and did the thing he knew how to do better than almost anyone. He observed. He saw the subtle hierarchy in the room, who deferred to whom, the strained smiles, the genuine alliances. He saw a few faces he recognized from the Brighton parent community, watching him with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. The reporter, Nina Cruz from Channel 7, was there with a cameraman, credentialed for the charity portion of the evening. Cassandra had allowed the press, confident the story would be about her philanthropy. It was a calculated risk. Leo intended to make it her mistake. He didn't approach her directly. Instead, he moved through the crowd, a polite smile on his face. A few people recognized him from the news from the Solil. He got nods, a few awkward glances away. Then he was approached by an older gentleman with kind eyes, Henry Walsh, the retired founder of a major tech firm and Brighton's single largest endowment donor. "Mr. Vance," Walsh said, extending a hand. "I've been following this situation. My granddaughter is at Brighton. She's in the 3rd grade. I showed her a picture of your daughter. She said Maya is always kind in the library." Walsh's gaze was direct. "I've been on that school board for 20 years. We've confused privilege with character. It's a sickness. I wanted you to know that." It was the first sign that the fortress had more than one crack. Leo thanked him, his mind racing. Walsh's public support could change everything, but before he could process it, a smooth voice cut through the murmur. "I'm surprised you could find a tuxedo that fits, Mr. Vance. I hear most rental places have standards." Cassandra Thorne stood before him, a glacial smile on her lips. The circle around them went quiet, sensing blood in the water. Leo met her gaze. He didn't smile back. The invitation said visionary leadership. I was curious to see what that looked like up close. "It looks like building institutions," she said, her voice carrying. "Not tearing them down with hysterics over children's squabbles." This was the moment, the trap. She expected him to get angry, to shout, to justify himself, to look like the unstable outsider. He took a different tack. He spoke calmly, his voice pitched not for her but for the ring of influential people now listening. "You're right, it's about building. You build companies, I build meals. And schools, they're supposed to build character. The question this community needs to ask is, what kind of character are we building? Are we building young men who believe their wealth grants them immunity? Or are we building children who understand that empathy is the only true currency that matters?" A flicker of irritation crossed Cassandra's face. He wasn't playing his part. "This is a charity gala, not a podium for your self-righteousness. We've raised $2 million tonight for children's hospitals." "And that's commendable," Leo said, not breaking eye contact. "But philanthropy shouldn't be a shield. You can write a check to heal strangers while allowing your son to harm the child sitting next to him in class. That's not leadership. That's hypocrisy." The gasp in the circle was audible. Cassandra's mask slipped, revealing pure fury. "How dare you?" "I dare," Leo said, his voice still calm, Because my daughter came home with black paint in her hair and shame in her heart. And your response wasn't to teach your son accountability. It was to try and destroy her father. You didn't send a lawyer to help him understand what he did wrong. You sent one to silence me. That's not power, Ms. Thorne, that's fear." Henry Walsh stepped forward, placing a hand lightly on Leo's shoulder. "He has a point, Cassandra. This has gone far beyond the children. The school's handling has been disgraceful. The board will be voting on new anti-bullying protocols next week, transparent ones. I suggest you focus your considerable energies on supporting those, for your son's sake." The public rebuke from Walsh was a tectonic shift. Cassandra stood isolated, the social calculus of the room visibly changing around her. The reporter, Nina Cruz, was filming discreetly from the edge. Cassandra saw it. She saw her narrative crumbling in front of the very audience she needed to control. For a long second, she said nothing. Then she turned on her heel and walked away, a retreat that was more damning than any argument. The following week was a whirlwind of consequence. The Brighton Academy Board, under pressure from Walsh and a mobilized group of parents, voted unanimously to adopt the Vance protocols. A transparent, independent anti-bullying committee with parent and student representation, an annual audit of disciplinary cases, mandatory social-emotional learning curriculum for all grades. The head of the board called Leo to deliver the news personally and to offer a formal, public apology to Maya, which was read at a school assembly. Maya's expulsion was not only rescinded, she was welcomed back with a clean slate. But Maya, after a long talk with her father, made her own choice. She didn't want to go back. The memories were too heavy. With the settlement from the school, a discreet financial package to cover therapy and alternative education, Leo enrolled her in a progressive, arts-focused public school a district over. On her first day, she wore a paint-splattered smock, not a uniform. She came home smiling, talking about a pottery project. The light was back in her eyes. At work, Leo thrived. Casa Abuela's events division, under his direction, became the most sought after in the city. He hired Sarah Bennett, the whistle-blowing teacher, to run their community outreach programs, teaching nutrition workshops in underfunded schools. The former fine dining chef found a deeper satisfaction in feeding people with purpose, not just precision. Cassandra Thorne's victory was Pyrrhic. She won the legal right to her reputation, but she lost the court of her peers. The story of the gala confrontation, detailed in a follow-up news segment, cemented a narrative of cruel overreach. Donations to her foundation dipped. She withdrew Oliver from Brighton Academy mid-year, enrolling him in a distant boarding school, the ultimate quiet concession. The surprising detail, the final twist, came 6 months later. Leo received a letter, not an email. Thick, expensive stationery, but not from Cassandra. It was from Oliver Thorne. The handwriting was a boy's, uneven but earnest. "Dear Mr. Vance, I'm writing to apologize to you and to Maya. What I did was wrong and cruel. I am sorry. I am in a new school. I have to see a counselor every week. We talk about why I did those things. It is hard. My mother does not think I should send this letter. I am sending it anyway. Sincerely, Oliver." Leo held the letter for a long time. He showed it to Maya. She read it, her face thoughtful. "Do you forgive him?" Leo asked. Maya shrugged. "I don't know yet, but I'm glad he's sorry. It makes it feel less pointless." In that moment, Leo saw the true victory, not in an enemy's defeat, but in the possibility of a bully's remorse and in his daughter's capacity for grace. The story didn't end with a grand celebration. It ended with a quiet evening in their apartment. Leo was developing a new menu for a community fundraiser. Maya was at the table painting a canvas, a vibrant, joyful explosion of color with no black in sight. The scars were still there, but they were healing. Leo had lost a prestigious job but found his integrity. He had fought a Goliath not with a sling, but with the truth, and in doing so, he had reminded an entire community of its own conscience. He looked at his daughter, then at the faded chef's coat hanging on the back of a chair, the red circle of Le Soleil still visible. It was no longer a symbol of a world he aspired to. It was a relic of a battle fought. His weapon now was his knife, his cutting board, his ability to nurture. His platform was his kitchen, his community. The single dad in the flour-dusted coat had not just protected his child. He had changed the recipe for an entire ecosystem, proving that the most powerful ingredient in any society is not wealth, but the courage to say, no one gets a manual for moments like these. No chapter on what to do when the system designed to protect your child instead protects their tormentor. Leo Vance's story is more than a viral headline about a dad confronting a bully's mother. It is a stark map of where power truly lives, not just in boardrooms or bank accounts, but in the quiet courage to say, this stops here. The research we glimpsed at the start is the backdrop. The 19.2%, the higher odds for kids from single-parent homes, the clear link between vast economic inequality and accepted social cruelty. These aren't just statistics. They are the conditions of the battlefield. Leo Vance walked onto that field armed only with the truth and a father's love, and he proved that those conditions are not immutable. They are choices. A school chooses which policies to enforce. A community chooses who to believe. A parent chooses what to teach their child about power. The lingering question is whether Leo won. By any measure that matters, his daughter's smile, his regained purpose, the changed policies at a prestigious academy, he did. The real question is what his victory reveals about our own thresholds. At what point do we stop accepting the world as it is and start demanding what it should be? For Leo, the threshold was black paint in his daughter's hair. For others, it might be a whispered slur, a stolen opportunity, a silenced voice. The weapon isn't always a lawsuit or a media campaign. Sometimes, it's simply the refusal to look away. Maya Vance is painting in color again. Oliver Thorne is, perhaps for the first time, being taught accountability instead of entitlement. These are small, fragile corrections in the trajectory of two young lives. But corrections matter. They are the opposite of complicity. Leo's journey from a chef focused on perfecting a sauce to a man challenging an entire system reminds us that expertise isn't confined to a field. A father's expertise is protection. A citizen's expertise is holding institutions accountable. A human being's expertise is empathy. We end not at a finish line, but at a starting point. The story of the single dad in the chef's coat is a blueprint, not an anomaly. It proves that the most formidable force against entrenched power is not greater power, but unwavering principle. It proves that a parent's love, when focused with clarity, can recalibrate the scales of an entire community. So the next time you witness an imbalance, a quiet injustice, remember the taste of that truth. And ask yourself, what ingredient will you bring to the table? Subscribe for more stories of courage that redefine the recipe.